Hey everyone, welcome to 3 Beers Deep for April 13th, 2015. I'm recording this earlier in the morning before I start work, so it's going to be a shorter show than usual because I've just got a lot going on, and I lost my entire Sunday to being hungover. I was at a good friend's wedding on Saturday, in which it was not only a celebration of the union of these two people and their future together, but a lot of friends in the Chicago area are moving away. There's a lot of folks that are kind of hitting their 30s, realizing, oh no, if I want to move to another city and try something different other than where I grew up my whole life, I kind of need to do it now. So it was a bit of a special night, kind of a sad night, but bittersweet. But it also meant that I had a little too much to drink. I mostly just spent Sunday on the couch and drifting in between naps. So didn't get to record as much as I wanted. Didn't get as much stuff prepped for the channel before I am gone Monday and Tuesday, rather today and tomorrow, because I'm going to be in Nashville, Tennessee at Belmont University giving a talk about basically internet security, how to track down your information online, what information to worry about, what information to not worry about, kind of framing that in the larger context of a world in which we are increasingly less interested in protecting our own privacy, despite the fact that when asked directly, we would probably all say that privacy is important to us. So it's at Belmont University. You can check my Twitter feed for specifics on where to show up to that. I don't have that in front of me right now, unfortunately, but it's in Nashville, and it's free. Anyone can show up, and I'd love to see you there if you somehow see this message before I give the talk tomorrow, Tuesday, at 10 a.m. So let's get to your questions. While Darren Greatly asks, after the Deus Ex leak last week, I wonder what it was like for someone in your position to get this information. Is getting info early in the decision to go live with it just about clicks/getting the story first? Was there a moral component? Maybe moral isn't the right word, but do you ever find yourself feeling for the PR team that has to do the job, who then gets preempted by a leak like this? So I don't. There's some interesting questions there. I don't think it's not my job to feel bad for a PR team not having their marketing plan roll out exactly the way they want. Part of the role of the press, even in the enthusiast press, in which we are not covering starving children, we're talking about video games, but nonetheless, it is our job as sort of a watchdog in between the consumer who is spending their hard-earned money on video games and game publishers and creators who are making those games and putting them out into the world, to act as someone in between. And so sometimes disrupting those marketing plans is a good way to act as that watchdog. I have not spent most of my career worrying too much about breaking exclusives on unannounced games. I just find that to be not that interesting. It is certainly a worthy endeavor for other folks. And Jason Schreier at Kotaku does that all the time. And I just focus my efforts elsewhere. In this case, what happened was not that we came across information early and then decided to publish it. It's not that Kotaku was responsible for distributing exclusively a leak of Deus Ex Mankind Divided assets. Instead, they leaked through some other means. I forget exactly where they showed up. But basically, they popped up on the popular gaming forum NeoGAF, and then we noticed that and decided to put it up as well. And so that was a case in which our hands were clean insofar as that stuff leaking out early and the plans being disrupted. Do you feel like in a larger sense, like bad that a lot of hard work went into like planning that Twitch ARG that was happening, and then suddenly they had to pretend that wasn't a teaser for the new Deus Ex, and then they had to abandon. I mean, they probably spent weeks, months putting that stuff together, and a lot of people spent nights, days, and weekends getting that stuff ready to try and make that a fun reveal for fans. And so in that sense, yeah, I guess I feel bad, but I also have to know my role in all of this, and it is not to feel bad, and it's to do my job to try and inform consumers to the best of my ability. And I'm going to inform them by drinking a sip of this coffee. KYO003 asks, with the reveal of Deus Ex Mankind Divided, I tried again going back to the original Deus Ex, but any attempts to play ended with me soured on the experience, not to mention the graphics, and ended up completely uninstalling it, missing out on the better aspects of the game, and the story never got to the Statue of Liberty. Have you ever tried going back to it, had any success? I believe the last time that I went back to the original Deus Ex was when we looked at sort of I can't remember if we were looking at a visuals update or we decided to just load up Deus Ex, but for some reason we did it at Giant Bomb, like back in the old office a number of years ago. I think I was like Dave Snyder was in on that. Ryan Davis was in on that. There's a bunch of people on that quick look all together. Deus Ex is totally one of my favorite games of all time. It's why I was so excited about Human Revolution. I was glad that it turned out pretty well. I'm excited for Mankind Divided, even if we've seen very little about what that game actually is quite yet. I am not surprised if going back to that original game, especially if you have no nostalgia for it, especially if you didn't play it before, that it would be extremely difficult. It's probably an unforgiving game. It's probably one in which you look at the mechanics and go, wow, they've done so much since then. It's not, when you play a game like Mega Man 2, I think Mega Man 2, which is also one of my favorite games of all time, holds up differently because I don't know if necessarily platformers or action platformers have gotten better since Mega Man 2. There have been great ones, awesome ones, classic ones, but when you look at Mega Man 2, I don't know if what immediately comes to mind is, man, it's impressive how much they've improved upon this type of game since then. And I think Deus Ex falls into a category in which you go, wow, it's impressive how much they've improved upon these types of games since then. And so that makes it difficult to go back, or at least to go back, you have to go through a learning curve or a de-learning curve, as the case may be, or coming to grips with the fact that it's just, it's an older game. It's a game from the 90s, and or is it from the early aughts? I can't remember exactly when Deus Ex falls necessarily, but I guess what I'm saying is that I don't blame you for not being able to enjoy the original Deus Ex. I think that is probably a difficult thing to do, especially when you have games like Human Revolution and Dishonored, which have taken what Deus Ex did, and part of why it was so amazing at the time was because it was amazing at the time. I don't know that Deus Ex necessarily completely holds up, other than as a construct and a contextual lens for a lot of systems and ideas that have been improved upon since then. That said, Deus Ex is still an amazing game. I'm fine with that. Anonymous asks, what is your reaction to how Phantom Dust and its developer got screwed by Microsoft executives? The amount of scope creep they introduced without increasing the budget is absolutely absurd. It's hard to believe a company as experienced with software development as Microsoft would tolerate that level of incompetence from its employees, especially when it just cost them millions. Hard to say. One of the things about that story, which is a fantastic analysis / postmortem from Jason Schreier on Kotaku, on which he examined how Phantom Dust was in development at Darkside Games, I think that was the studio. The long story short, they were supposed to just make a multiplayer-only Phantom Dust game for $5 to $6 million, and then suddenly Microsoft wanted a single-player campaign and all these other features, and refused to, allegedly refused to increase the budget appropriately for the game. One thing that story doesn't have is Microsoft's side, right? Now, they declined to comment. They didn't really want to discuss the inner workings of a game that they claim they're still working on and have passed on to another developer, supposedly. We don't know who that developer is or if they're just saving face. Nonetheless, we don't know Microsoft's side of that. It's entirely possible that the story is 100% true, but we also have to remember that we're all hearing this from the company that went under, the company that bet all of its future on Phantom Dust, and you could reasonably say that while it was a noble endeavor, that maybe that was the wrong move. Maybe that, putting all of your chips into this one bet, when that bet doesn't pay off, that's when the company sours as a result. So, I think if you take everything on that story at face value, and if it occurred exactly that way, and the only rationale that Microsoft could give was that, yep, we screwed up, it is unfortunate. It is sad, because it sounded like that developer was passionate about making that game, and if the reason we don't get a Phantom Dust update is because of Microsoft's incompetence, or anyone's incompetence for that matter, that's going to make me deeply, deeply sad, because I really enjoyed that original Xbox game. I need to track down original Xbox and a copy of that, because I'd love to do a live stream of it sometime in the future. But I truly hope that they get Phantom Dust on track, and I hope everyone at Darkside Games kind of figures it out. It seems like they were passionate about what they do, and it's unfortunate that Phantom Dust didn't work out for everyone. Kibble says, what are your thoughts on Candyman, both the movie and the monster/character? It's been so long since I've seen that series that I don't know if I have strong feelings either way. I love the conceit of, Candyman, saying that into a mirror, and then you can summon him into your presence. I think that remains like a pretty amazing horror gimmick, regardless of whether, we're talking about Bloody Mary or Candyman, or when they use the Bloody Mary joke or myth in Paranormal Activity 3. So yeah, I don't know. I'd have to go back and watch Candyman. I should do that at some point. There's like 3 or 4 of those. Lightpole asks, hey Patrick, do you have any favorite movie or television critics? Any recommendations? Thanks. Yes. Alan Sepinwall. Easily one of the best critics out there. He mostly talks about television on his regular series of columns at hitfix.com, hitfix.com. There's also the excellent Drew McWeeny over there who talks more about film. But Alan Sepinwall basically guides he is my TV compass. If he tells me that this is worth watching, I'm at least going to watch the pilot and see if I line up with him. But I have thoroughly enjoyed all of his weekly columns about the episodes of Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, Better Call Saul, just Mad Men, just across the board. He is an excellent critic. He wrote a wonderful book whose name escapes me. The Revolution Was Televised, I believe, in which each chapter is devoted to talking to the creators behind some of the greatest television shows of the last 15 years. He basically starts with The Sopranos and then works his way to Breaking Bad. And it's just a fascinating book, and that every single show in that book is one, if you haven't seen, you should fix that immediately. Yeah, Alan Sepinwall. He's got a good Twitter account, too. Snigget. Thoughts on the spending cap Nintendo put into their Pokemon Rumble World free-to-play game? Can we begin to hope they might continue to do this in the mobile space? I think it's a really interesting question. This idea that Nintendo feels the need to employ some level of moral or ethical responsibility about a free-to-play game. You know, they have, frustratingly so, put restrictions on their network stuff. You know, basically, friend codes were born out of this. You could argue they were born out of incompetence, but if you believe Nintendo's point of view, it was born out of trying to make the internet stuff more friendly to children and trying to protect them and put them in a safe space that was reflective of Nintendo's philosophy of the kinds of people that play their games, or that everyone can play their games and not be exposed to the wider grossness that sometimes is part of being on the internet. You know, I mean, this is why Splatoon is not going to have voice chat, even though, why can't you just make it for friends only? That seems to make the most sense, but they're not doing that, and their rationale is that, the internet's toxicity has made it so that we don't want to expose players to that because we think it ruins or impacts the experience. So I don't think it's a huge surprise then to see that they're moving that sort of philosophy into free-to-play, and I wouldn't be surprised if their games continue to have some restrictions in that regard. The temptation to make money has got to be pretty great, though, and I wonder if maybe those limits end up getting age-gated in some way, right? So if it goes onto mobile, in which if you have your age restrictions set up to a certain degree, then maybe there's a cap on spending. And then if you don't, if you're an adult that just wants to spend as much as they want, they're going to let you do that. I think it's incredibly interesting to think about that, especially because they're going to this mobile space because they want to make money. And so are they willing to put a cap on how much money they can make? If they can make a truly addictive viral game that people are more willing to spend as much money as they want on a daily basis, and Nintendo going to really say no? I think it's an interesting idea. I don't think it's guaranteed that that's going to transition over, though. I think right now a lot of what they're doing on their 3DS experiment are exactly that, experiments. And with this last question, like I said, this is a short one, but this seems timely given what I'm going to be talking about tomorrow. Patrick, since you're an internet personality, you invite people into your personal life. How do you decide what to share and what to keep private? Also, how do you decide about how much to share about the other people in your life, such as family and friends? Do you discuss it with them or just avoid mentioning them? So, one thing that I'm very careful about is location data. I'm especially prickly about folks coming into my apartment and having public Instagram accounts that have a photo map, and then them taking photos of my dog or whatever, and then tagging that. Because essentially, by having a public account, if someone is able to piece together that I'm friends with them, they're able to then go into their Instagram account, check a photo map, and figure out where I live. So, that's something in which, I haven't gone as far as to put up signs in my apartment, but I'm always have to be kind of that guy and tell people like, hey, just make sure you click this little button. And sometimes people aren't even aware that it's there. I mean, I'm often surprised that people don't realize that the 30 photos of their dog they've taken at their apartment is also a public database of where they live that anyone could look up as if they're not, discussing their privacy settings and setting those appropriately. I've slowly but surely been kind of introducing my wife into some of the stuff I do in a way that I have not in the past. We had her as a guest on the Rewatch podcast, which is the second time I've done something publicly with her. I had her on a brief stream with the Area 5 guys when I was streaming from the Cards Against Humanity office a month or so ago. And I've been very reluctant to do stuff like that in the past because when folks have looked for ways to drag my family through the mud as a way to try and get to me, it has often been my wife that is the one that they target. But she was interested in exploring some of this stuff, and I want to dip my toes into it. I'm very protective of her. I'm protective of the people around me. And I guess I just try and take it slowly. And I'm also very critical of finding information out about me on the internet, and the information about my friends and my family. And like, I will straight up just go to some of these websites that aggregate addresses and cell phone numbers, and I'll volunteer to have that information taken down. You don't necessarily have to. You can have more than just your stuff taken down. So I have gone out of my way to get friends and family stuff taken down in order to not only protect myself, but to protect them, because these people who are the friends and family in my life, they didn't, in the words of Adam Jensen, they didn't ask for this. They didn't ask for the internet's grossest sections to come after them and to bother them when I decide to speak out on something, or when I decide to be critical of something that creates a backlash. And so I believe it's my responsibility. It's incumbent on me to be responsible about that and to try and protect them in the best way that I can. Yeah, I could talk about that for a long time, and I'm going to do a little bit of that in Nashville tomorrow. So, as I mentioned at the top, if you're at Belmont University, if you're near the Nashville area, please come out at 10 a.m. To Belmont University to see me speak about these topics and others related to privacy and internet security. But that's going to do it for 3 Beers Deep. You can submit questions to future installments of this Q&A series to patrickklubick.tumblr.com. If you'd like to listen to a podcast version of 3 Beers Deep, you can do so at Inventory Management on iTunes or inventorymanagement.simplecast.fm, which has an RSS link that you can plug into other podcast players, and you can stream and download the episodes from that site as well. I recently put out a podcast conversation with Sean Elliott, the former games journalist and now designer over at Arcane Studios, the developers of Dishonored, and he previously worked at Irrational, working on BioShock Infinite. I believe he worked on the combat over there. We talked about Resident Evil game design and what exactly makes it interesting, what exactly makes it not interesting, and used that through the lens of Resident Evil Revelations 2. If you'd like to hear more of those conversations, please let me know. Sean and I are interested in doing more, but that's contingent upon people saying, that's an interesting thing I'd like to hear more of. So please let us know. And review Inventory Management on iTunes. Reviews let this podcast spread out to more people, and the more the merrier. So with that, I'll see you guys next week.